Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we've taken a time machine to the 23rd century to finally answer the age-old question: who is the greatest wrestler of all time? Now you'll be taking on the role of wrestling legends from the past, present, and future as you execute moves by playing attack cards, unleashing devastating combos, power bombs, pile drivers, aerial stunts, and deadly submissions. All-Time Wrestling is a card and dice game that brings the fast-paced action and excitement of professional wrestling to your tabletop. Now the base game is for 2 players, but there are expansions available, expanding it to 1 to 4 players. Each session takes 20 to 40 minutes to play, is for ages 14 and up, and it's published by Cation Arts. Now it's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototypes. They're not final. To see all the most up-to-date art and components, check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video. I'm going to focus on the base game in this video mostly, but I will show you some of the other add-ons and different expansions that you can get at the end of this video. The base game comes with 4 wrestlers, as you can see. 2 of those are Kurt Angle and British Bulldog, 2 of them that I remember as a kid. And the base game is a 2-player game, so each player is going to select one of these wrestlers, and each of these are asymmetrical. They act differently, they have their own decks, they have different health and stamina and abilities and things like that. Now on your player board, you'll be tracking your health and you'll be tracking your stamina, and stamina is essentially sort of like a currency in the game that you'll be using to play attack cards. And over the course of the game, you're trying to be the one to pin or cause your opponent to submit, and of course the lower you would get health, the easier it is for your opponent to do that to you. So you're trying to work their health down and then either pin them or cause them to submit to win. Now within each player's attack deck, they are unique cards to themselves, meaning they all have their artwork on them and all specific moves that wrestler would do. And some of these cards are even some of their special moves or even their finishing move. And at the beginning of the game, players are going to be able to select which cards they want to start in their hand. Now you'll be able to choose which 5 cards you want, but the total damage that these cards do couldn't exceed 9, and it shows you how much damage each of these cards would do to your opponent. Now one player is going to start. They're going to have the initiative, and the start player has a little bit of a disadvantage in the first round. They'll have actually 1 less stamina, and they'll actually have to shuffle 1 of the 5 cards they selected back into their deck. But let's show you how a turn typically works. So as the attacking player, you have that initiative, and you have 3 options, but most of the time you're going to be playing an attack card like this, like arm drag, for example. Now when you play that card, you're going to reduce your stamina based on the card. So you're going to reduce it by 1 because you need stamina in order to do these moves. Then there's a window where the defensive player can try to do something to reverse or block it. We'll go over that later. Let's just assume that they decided not to do that. You'll next going to roll an attack die, and you'll need to be successful depending on the move that you're trying to do. So let's say we roll this die and it's 2. This shows you that you need a 2 or above in order to do this. Now there's different modifiers that might come into play and might make that number be higher or lower, but right now just the basics, we need a 2 or higher in order to have this be successful. And if it was, we would deal this much damage to the opponent. And so for example, they would lose 1 health like that. It would go down to here and then come all the way down. Next, you'll notice this here. This is momentum. You would gain 2 momentum for this specific move, the arm drag. So there's a match momentum board, and each player sits on either side. So the player 1 will be sitting over here, and the other player will be sitting over there. You put it in between yourselves. Let's say we were sitting over here on this side, player 1 here. We would move it 2 because it said plus 2 momentum. Now this is important because if you get to on a roll or unstoppable, it gets easier to play your special or finishing cards as you'll need to roll a smaller number. And assuming that was successful, as we showed, the defender gets some compensation. They can either gain a stamina or they can gain a card from the top of the deck. But if they have more than 5 cards in their hand, they need to remove 1 and shuffle it back into this deck. Now at this point, some of the cards might allow you to trigger some other offensive abilities, like this one here is Taunt. And so here they would gain 1 stamina, 1 momentum, and get to draw 2 cards from their deck. But then the opponent would receive a stamina, a card from their deck, and 1 health. Or maybe if the cross body block was successful, this shows you that you can recover. So you would be able to gain 2 stamina and draw a card, and the opponent would receive a stamina, a card, and a health. So we could have done that if cross body block is what we did, and we wanted to enact that extra ability there. Then, since this was successful, this card would go into their discard pile, and because it was successful, the attacker gets to attack again with another action. However, when you were playing this card, if our roll did not match what we needed in order to make this successful, we could, if you wanted to, discard a card from your hand to re-roll this die. Then if we re-roll it, and it's good, we would go through the flow that I had just shown you. But if we discarded a card from our hand to re-roll it, and again, it was not at least equal to here, and again, also taking into effect any modifiers that might be going on, then you would shuffle this original card that you played back into your deck and then draw the top card, but then the attack ends and the defender gains the initiative and they'll become the attacker. Now I told you earlier when you declare an attack by placing it face up and then you spend the stamina cost, there's a defensive ability, a window that they might choose to trigger. So let's talk about what they can do to try to block or reverse this. Now this defensive ability window is key in regaining the initiative, and there's 4 different ways this can be done. One is by doing a reversal. Now you have a token that starts here. It's a one-time use per game. Once you use it, it's gone. And in this case, you would spend this, you'd trigger on the defense before they rolled, and you would lose 1 stamina. The opponent would lose 1 health, but you'd gain 1 momentum back, and you could trigger the recover ability, which would give you 2 stamina, 1 card, but the opponent would receive this, for example. Another option is to use a permanent ability, shown by this. This is the King of Counters. We'd trigger this on defense before an attack roll. We would spend a stamina, and we would do an attack roll check. If we get 6, which would be successful, we then would gain the initiative from then, and we'd become the attacker. You might also have one-time abilities, as shown here. This one triggers on offense, but this one triggers on defense. Before an attack roll, you'd gain the initiative, but you'd spend 2 stamina, 2 health, you'd gain 2 momentum, and you could attempt to pin. We'll go over pinning later. Now the opponent can counter by rolling 5 or more, or by using their reversal. And again, these are one-time use once they're gone. So those are different ways that you can sort of defend, but there's one more, which is blocking. Now remember, if you, as the attacker, are successful, you get to continue to play attack cards. And if they have played 3 cards in a row and all 3 of them do 2 damage or less, you have the opportunity to block. Now to do that, you'd be blocking this 3rd card, and to do so, you would just reduce 2 stamina. Or instead, they could block by using cards, which is they can block any attack card by discarding 2 cards from your hand. It's also important to note that if you use an ability to try to block or reverse, and that doesn't work, you can still use another one, assuming that you still have the token for it, or like this one, we might try this one. If it doesn't work, then maybe we decide to use our one-time reversal, for example. Now, if that block or reversal was successful, not only do they get to take the initiative, the defender, the attack card that was stopped is shuffled back into the draw pile of this player and a replacement card's drawn. Now to win, you're trying to secure a pinfall or submission, and both are represented by the pin ability that you could use during the optional offensive abilities section that we went over already. And remember that if you have enough momentum, when you play these cards, you'll need to roll less. For example, for this special card, it needs a 4 or more, but if we were here unstoppable, we'd only need a 2 because it's -2. Or if we're doing a running power slam, it's a finish, and we would need to roll a 6, but -2, we'd need a 4 at this point, assuming we're not taking into effect any other modifiers. Now the finisher itself is also a special card as well, because once you play this, it doesn't go to your discard pile, it always goes back into your hand. But let's talk about maybe resolving this one. Let's say we were unstoppable, we had a 6, minus the 2 is a 4, let's say this was successful, let's say we did some damage, and then during the optional offensive ability section, we decided to try to pin. Now normally, the defender would have 3 kick-out attempts to try to get out of the pin, but in this case, because we're pinning with this card, they actually get 1 less kick-out attempt, so they only have 2. Now to do this, they're going to roll 2 dice. Now let's say they rolled the dice and they got a 4. If it is equal or less than their health, then they successfully kick out, which means they don't lose, but the attacker still gains the initiative. If what they roll is where their health is or larger, then they unsuccessfully kicked out and they'll get another try. Remember, you'll have 3 by default. But let's say that they were here. Then they actually have 1 less. And because of the card that was just played during the pin, they have 1 less. So they only have 1 chance to roll a 4 or less. If they don't, then they are pinned and they lose, but if they do, then they'll kick out and it'll be the attacker's turn. Still, they'll have the initiative. Now also, before each kickout roll, the defender could choose to convert stamina into health. Each 3 stamina that you spend could give you 1 health. So that might be huge. If we were here, we might want to spend that to move up here so we don't lose a kickout attempt. Now that's pretty much how you play the basic game, but there is an advanced game you can play using advanced attack. And there's 2 types of combo attacks in the advanced game. One of them is called Rampaging Attacks, and you'll see the little up arrow right here on these cards, for example. So you'd play them simultaneously like this, and you would spend the stamina of all the combined cards minus 1. So here we have 1, 2, 3, so we would spend 2 stamina to get these out. But then you roll 1 die per card, and you roll those simultaneously, then you assign these to the different cards. In this case, we needed a 2 on all 3 of them, so this would be successful. But sometimes the cards might be different numbers, and you can assign which die you want to which card. And then after that, you are going to go through the card, deal the damage if you fulfilled those, and if there is a taunt or recovery, you can activate one of those. And then all the played cards are discarded regardless of how many of them were successful. Now these rampaging attacks are considered one attack for the purposes of blocking and defender's compensation, meaning the opponent would only draw 1 card or gain 1 stamina if they sustain any damage from the attack. Or if the total damage on the card is 3 or more, like it is here, the attack can't be blocked by spending 2 stamina, as we showed you in blocking. There's also combo chains. Say we play this card. We look in the bottom right, we see this. We can play when we play the next card, assuming this one was successful, we have a card that here in the bottom left, if the color and shape of either of these 2 icons matches even one of the bonds in the bottom right, because they're sort of touching, they're linked right there, then it's essentially a good combo, and what happens is you can give +1 damage to this next successful attack. And that's how the circle ones work. So we do this, at least one of these icons matches one of these, and we play this, and then instead of doing 2 damage, it would do 3, assuming it was successful. Now in this case, we play this card, let's say it's successful, we have a green square here, and on the next one on the bottom left, we play this, green square, it's successful. Now the squares of the same color and number, that allows you to reduce the target number of the next attack. So in this case, instead of this being needed to roll 4 or above, you only need to roll a 3. Now this one no longer has any icons here, but if it did, you could continue comboing if you have the right cards to do so. So now I'm going to show you some of the cards from the other wrestlers in the base game. Here's the current angled cards, and feel free to pause here and take a bigger look at your full screen there and see what some of these do. Now let's look at some of the other wrestlers that come in the base game. Again, you can pause here to check out the full stamina, the full health, some of the extra abilities here. And here are their attack cards. Pausing if you like to see a closer look. And here is the last of the 4 wrestlers that come in the base game. You can check out the abilities if you'd like to pause. And here you can take a closer look at their deck as well. There are also some other add-ons available. For example, Double Trouble adds 2 new wrestlers, Andre the Giant and Randy Savage, 2 more than I remember as a kid. It enables tag matches, 4-player play, last man standing, and it also includes cage matches with a separate board that shows you how the lower cage and upper cage and top of the cage work. Also, there is All or Nothing that adds 2 more wrestlers. Also, it is a single player expansion. It allows you to play solo player matches and, more importantly, season 1 of the campaign. Now in that campaign, you'll embark on a journey full of ups and downs, friends and foes, twists and turns, sweat, blood and tears, in the hope that you'll become the all-time champion. Now the campaign mode is highly replayable, has storylines, and various strategies to pursue. For example, you choose between upgrading your skills or healing yourself, so you refresh yourself for the next match. It's easy to set up and store away and has a fail-forward system, meaning that every match and action you do matters now and for the future. Well, there you have all-time wrestling, and as I showed in the overview, it has standard play and advanced modes of play, and it's accessible to gamers and non-gamers alike, using the intuitive mechanics that are reminiscent of your favorite wrestling games. Now, if you'd like to see all the most up-to-date art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me. It's right in the description of this video. Now, that's going to take you directly to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure that Cation Arts would love your support.